Everybody, this is free to play Shroom or F2P Shroom here from Eamon 846. I apologize about the delay. I wasn't as satisfied or happy with the earlier renditions of these update. I felt like it was a bit convoluted and wasn't as optimized as I'd prefer it to be. So, I figure I'll just I'd redo it and try to make it a little better. Bit of a perfectionist at times, but I just want to make this more digestible than convoluted, as the class is already a bit convoluted. But first and foremost, we'll start off with PvE and then we'll move into PvP. Um, for souls, since you don't have a preset, it's aligned across both PvP and PvE. This is what I'm currently working with. I have most of it into attack, and then I have some into HP, defense, and crit res. The rest of them I don't really care about, and I don't think you need to until later in the game. When you have all the pink souls, especially. Um, but if you notice, I got pink attack first. If you're wondering why you do this, is because attack is pretty much the name of the game in the early game, as well as the base stats, so attack, defense, and HP. If you notice when they're red, it's just HP bonus, and then it's going to turn when it's pink into global attack or global HP, global defense. So you get a nice amount of scaling that is going to increase as you level up these souls, which is something that you're going to do pretty much as you continue to play the game. Um, and again, attack is pretty much the one that I prioritized. If you notice here, there's also a third stat, and it's better if you get either PAL crit damage or different resistance types. If you want to see what you can get, there's a preview right here. And if you go to the preview, you go to Immortal, and you can see all the souls. And first, you'll notice that these don't have global, so they don't really change as they go from red to pink. But the first three, global HP, global defense, and global attack, those change from the HP boost. So again, usually those are the best to get first as your first three pink souls. But I'll explain the order of priority based on how you want to approach it. I'll give you a couple of different suggestions. The different bonus effects, like I was saying, that third stat, if you click the bonus effect, it'll show you right here. So, on attack, the different options were uh, launch, global combo damage, kind of all useless for your POW tamer or your necro build. You could use the healing or the launch or the global basic attack. Maybe if you want to have an archer for PvE, since archer is always better for PvE, global combo damage might be something you might want to keep. But in terms of tamer, there's not really anything too important from this soul. As you get into some of the other ones, and you'll notice as you click the bonus effects, some of them have POW crit, so increases POW crit damage. It's not a very large boost, but scaling your POW crit damage anywhere, especially in the early game, is super nice. So this gives you an extra little bonus. And then, there's some different ones that only give resistance, like I think HP. Yeah, HP only gives resistance. So, trying to have combo res, counter res, skill res, or pal damage res for PvP, and then basic attack damage res is never terrible for PvE, especially as a necro. You do tend to take some hits because you don't kill as quick as an archer in most instances. But yeah, that's my souls. If you're wondering the priority thing that I said I would recommend, it really depends how you want to approach the game. So if you want to go for a more PvP focused, then you really want to focus your damage and your base stats. So, you would do global attack and then you do global HP. So you get the much larger HP and attack boosts. And then your third soul kind of depends on what you want for, I guess, next. And it really depends. If you go defense, that's obviously gonna be more of your sustain, and it's going to give you the ability to have the large defensive boost versus if you went for something like crit res, like I was saying earlier, this isn't going to change to global crit res bonus, and the scaling from a red soul to a pink soul doesn't change. But what it's going to add, if we go back to this preview, is going to add pal crit rate and pal crit damage. So that's an amazing one that you're definitely going to want to get either third or after defense. I think it definitely depends on how much damage you're outputting versus if you're dying too quick, that's always a decision for you to make based on your own individual gameplay. Um, Additionally, getting pink counter, you know, counter damage really isn't that useful, but the ability to scale your PAL damage is super useful. You know, if you're going to do PvP, it's either going to be attack, then HP, and then either defense or PAL crit rate, and then PAL damage, and then defense. Then you could work into some of the other ones. Whereas if you wanted a more PvE focused, you would get this pink combo soul for the boss damage earlier on. If you're asking where would you get that, you could get that as early as after HP. You could get it after you have the ability to scale your PAL crit damage or your PAL damage, whatever. Personally, for me, I want to have somewhat more of a generalized build where I could bounce between PvP and PvE. So personally, I want to have more likely than not attack, HP, then I'm going to move into PAL crit rate, um, and then PAL damage, and then defense. Or if I notice that I'm taking too much damage and I'm dying really quickly, I'll move into defense and then PAL crit rate, and then PAL damage, and then boss damage, etc. The other ones, like I was saying, the etc. part is Wildfire Piercer and Eye of the Abyss. Really not that important because, again, red crit damage scales as fast as pink crit damage. So if you're using, two dragons or two, a lizard and a dragon or the eggplant, and you're trying to get PAL crit damage based off your crit damage, you don't need pink crit damage to get more crit damage. As high of a level you have the red crit damage, it will give you the same boost as it was if it's the same level pink. It's just going to have the added bonus of giving you skill crit damage. So yeah, I think that's everything. If you're wondering how you get these really quickly, you go to the cross server ranked um, match, you go to shop, you scroll down to the bottom, and there's these red soul select twos. You combine one of those with your red soul select one in the fusion place. So you see, I did attack and I needed healing. So my red soul select two is healing, not the regen one. That'll give you HP, but the healing soul and then the attack. Make sure you're also not doing where is it? The basic attack soul. Make sure it's the regular attack soul. But yeah, those are just some things to look out for. Next, because it's generalized across all builds, at least for me right now, is Divining Path. For this, I've really just been trying to focus on PAL combo and PAL crit damage, um, or PAL crit rate. My apologies. Oh, one last thing to note. If you get this is with souls, if that wasn't apparent. But if you go to Guardian Star, it's going to give you the 10% PAL crit rate for having the pink crit res soul. So that's great. But this isn't scalable. So you could have it a max level soul, which is level 100, and it's still only going to give you 10% PAL crit rate. Um, so don't get your hopes up that you're thinking you're going to get some kind of giant boost out of it, but the 10% flat by itself is definitely very nice, especially in the earlier game when your divining isn't as set up and my gear isn't anywhere near perfect. But as we digress into the divining path, you're really going to want to focus PAL combo and PAL crit. As you see, I got lucky with a couple of these with a red PAL combo, and this is a yellow or an orange. I have no clue. Crit, and you see it's pretty much the same everywhere. This one's going to be tough to replace, but I'm probably just going to keep sensing it until I get, a PAL combo, PAL crit that are both purple or yellow or something, but this might just stay here forever, realistically. Same thing with the life path. If you're wondering alternatives or other things that are good to get, I would stick with Pal Combo and Pal Crit on the life path. You could do some wonky builds with counter and crit and combo, etc. But if you want the most simple build or what's most likely to work, this is definitely um, a less wonky, more ideal. You get the Pal combo, Pal crit here, and then you double up here. Additionally, you can get Pal Inspire, ignore Pal Res, Pierce, or ignore Block. But I'd say you really want to focus on getting your Pal stats up early, especially if you're like me, and I'll show you in a second. My gear is not perfect. Um, if you had perfect gear, or if you had a lot of pal combo and pal crit, you maybe got lucky in the life path, you could start building some pal inspire or some pierce, some ignore block, some ignore pal res. But I would say these are more things you want to worry about later on. If you're confused kind of because of some of the naming, I know it's a bit confusing. Oh, damage, right? So I don't have any examples here, but Al res right here is the ability for your opponent, or I guess if you're having it, it's you, to scale your PAL damage res based on this stat. And then that's why you want to ignore it, because if you ignore damage res or PAL res, you're reducing their ability to stack res. I know it's a bit confusing with the PAL damage res and the PAL res, but they go hand in hand. So there's really no need to worry about it too much unless you're talking about the number of the stat. Um, Inspire is the exact opposite concept, but applied back onto you. So, for this, you're going to reduce the enemy PAL crit, the PAL damage res, based on how high your PAL Inspire is. So how it works for either of those equations, if you're wondering how all those work, it's your, let's say, Pal Inspire, it's Pal Inspire minus opponent, ignore Pal Inspire, and then it is times by zero point zero 0.01. Basically, you're cutting a hundredth out of it. And if you have 5,000, you now have 50% removed. Or, yeah, if you have 5,000 pound spire and they have zero, you're going to have 50% removed in theory. Now, getting the 5,000 is extremely hard. Your opponent could also build the ignore, which completely negates your ability to build it. And they could also be building Pal Res, which is their version of the defense. So there's multiple levels and angles you can approach it. Like I said, I'd worry about it in the later game. And the same concepts apply to Pierce and Block, except instead of Pal damage res, they're affecting your actual overall damage res stat. So Pierce is going to reduce the enemy damage res, and Block is going to increase your own damage res. Hope that wasn't too confusing, but that might be a skip over part for some folks. Um, for PvE, now finally going into it, we have what I use for story. As you see here, I'm stuck very easily to fix this. You just go, you click challenge, you basically see how long it takes for the boss to get to you, or you could just be lazy and put it on something random. But I see it takes him or her, like 7 seconds or so, or 6 seconds, or 9 seconds, whatever it was, to actually get to me. And you could put on disarm instead of one of your damage skills, and then put on it for a skill delay. So let's say I was going to do that. Go here, go to set five, which is what I'm using, and I put a skill delay for, let's say, 6 seconds or 7 seconds. I think it was later than that. I think it was more around like 9 or 10. But just to note, disarm takes around a half second to a second for the skill to actually apply, especially if it's being auto cast instead of you clicking it, if I'm not mistaken. There's a slight difference in timing. So you might want to do that. Like this might be, well, as I showed you, I was stuck, so I'll leave this on, and this might be slightly better than what I was running. Um, but yeah, I'll show this full set now. I have my PAL combo, PAL crit, or trying to be that gear. Obviously, not all of it's perfect. If I click something random, it's probably like this. It's not ideal, but the PAL combo at least is there. Um, if you're wondering between my pals, I have basically a 50-50 split. Um, it's around 60-60 because of the fact that the clash skill is up. Not the clash skill, the winged dream skill is up. And when that is up, you're getting the extra 20% combo. Oh, this is actually more than I thought. So you're getting the 20%, which is taking me up to near 60% PAL crit, 70% PAL combo. And for most of my PvP fights, at least that's the whole time. In PvE, it's not the full time, at least not for everything. Some bosses might get evaporated that quickly, and some minions. But when you have waves of minions or you have waves of bosses like the lava dragon, that's not always the case. My pals, if you're wondering, I used the lizard in the first slot and the cat in the second slot. Once you awaken, they're both going to give you abilities. I have fully awakened, so I have the lizard giving me the pal crit and the cat giving me attack boost. Really nice quality of life update the devs did is the effect previews. So kind of hard if you have fat thumbs like me, some toe thumbs. But if you click the left side, you can see for the first two slots, and if you click the right side, you could see for what species PAL bonus you're gonna get. So if you're noticing, I'm using basically the things for the most damage, but then also two slimes for the extra energy regen. I noticed that because of the fact that a lot of times in a lot of my builds, because I'm kind of lazy and I leave one PAL set to go across multiple different skill sets and different presets based on what PvE thing I'm attacking. I'll show that in a moment. But a lot of the times, a pass or I win or I lose based off of my ability to um, live to the second disarm. So because of the fact that you have the cat here and the two hydro sprites, you have the 15% extra energy regen, which is basically making you like a mage. You could also be using, the avian. What is it? Dense cloud, I think. It's been a while since I used this. Yeah, dense cloud to have faster energy regen. Later on in the talents, you could very easily be having the energy regen through the sorcery. But for right now, I just have it through my red slime and through the extra 15% from having these three pals. I also have the damage res set bonus, but I wouldn't say that's too intentional. That's more so just due to the um, fact that for some things I need to uh, take less damage, and then for other things, it does the most damage. Now you could really easily replace it. Like I think in some of my sets, like the damage versions, there's like a tortoise here, and when there's a tortoise there, it's because it's going to do more damage. At least at one point, that's the highest damage pal I had because I didn't have the other pinks out. But when using the tortoise pal instead of the deer, then I wouldn't have the extra damage res, but it's doing more damage. So that's never a bad idea. Alternatively, you could have another snail in, but my damage multipliers aren't that crazy. So the snail is only slightly better than my deer right now, and at least the deer is giving me some extra damage res, so I could try to make it, like I said, to the second disarm trigger. Um, and as you see, even me just quick setting this disarm, it usually ends up working out pretty well. Um, Obviously, well, not obviously, this might not be too obvious to some folks, but different bosses have different mob speeds. So based on, and they might hit you from different areas, like how far they could hit you from. So the delay, the auto cast delay that you're going to use should really be changed based off of which boss you're using. Um, and then because of the fact that you're using the slimes or the hydro sprites and the snails, the amber snail relic is really good. Uh, Coupled with the fact that I use cat and deer, so I use the magic box. Um, if you were going to use cactuses for the extra combo, you could be using the Blessed Dew. If you were developing your pal crit damage, you could be using the bamboo for the pandas. But for right now, I'm kind of hoarding my resources, and I'll show that in a moment. Um, but yeah, here are my relics. It's really pretty simple. Um, if I want to live to the second disarm, you might want to throw on the immunity book every now and again. But more often than not, I just have the beast type hook on, just trying to do as much damage as possible. Especially when I'm being lazy, like right now, and I had the boost on earlier. I was kind of just letting it cook until I get paused, and then making slight adjustments and move through. Um, So this is what I was going to say. If you're going to focus on trying to hide behind your disarm time, I would really use the time statue. Most of the time you're going to be using the smoke bomb and at least the smoke bomb, but a lot of times also disarmed. So time statue is a great relic. But if you are not using disarmed, you could easily use the stellar statue or the crystal statue, just depending on what you're using. I like the crystal statue, just trying to make my slime bomb a little better. But I'm sure some people might have some differences if they go around testing it. But yeah, it really just depends on the skills that I'm using. Now moving on to the skills, the aforementioned skills. We've talked so much about the skills. You're slowing them down and it's damage. And like I said before, I guess I already talked about the skills, but disarm if needed. Why wasn't it needed before, if you're wondering? It's because of the fact that I got the pink attack soul. So I was being a little lazy and I was just leaving it on with a full damage build, just trying to see how far I could push. But now that I got a little more stuck, now I put the disarm in. I try to be a little more creative or crafty with um, my build. For the awakening slots, like I said, I fully awoken. So you need to be level, I think it's 120 to fully awoken, awakened. And you need all six of these crystals. So you get the awakening crystals, like I showed before. You go to the cross server ranked match. You go to the shop. In the bottom, you got the awakening crystals. You get six of those, and then you get all six of these slots, and they open randomly. Ideally, you get attack first, and HP, and probably the POW damage and defense, etc. The way I got them, which was abysmal, was like defense. I think I had like HP, like everything was tanky instead of attack. If I'm not mistaken, attack was literally my last one. So I was so upset in the fact that I couldn't scale the one thing that I actually wanted to scale. Um, but as you see here, damage is the name of the game. Um, and this is damage, and it shows as such because of the fact that, again, I use it across multiple different presets. So this is the same one I use for the boss thief preset, and the same one I use for one of my PvP presets. So it really depends on um, some variability for the Necro or Supreme Spirit class. If you're wondering why you don't go as balanced, I mean, you very easily could be, but the fact that me putting into HP or defense likely isn't going to change the amount of hits it's going to take for the boss to kill me or another player to kill me is usually why you're full stacking attack. and then I just put whatever's left after putting into PAL seal. I put whatever left into HP and defense, and then in a couple days I'll reset it because resetting it's free, and then I'll increase my attack a little, or I'll increase my PAL damage seal. If you're wondering why you go attack over PAL damage seal, this one should be empty. Yeah. So this is global. And again, that's always a very nice boost onto your final stat total. It's basically taking the multiplier, whatever the value was before then, and then giving it this nice boost at the end. So the global stats are really usually a much larger gain. Um, but this is going from 15% to the 34% versus, this is going from 1 to, or I mean, 45 to 57 in level difference. So it's really not the craziest difference. I'd say as you get your attack to 50, 60 and higher, that's when you're going to start having 20, 30 PAL damage on this here thing. PAL crit scales ridiculously slow here, so I really wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, you could have a couple of levels in it, but usually into attack, some into stats, and then the rest pretty much into pound damage. Um, for statue, I mean, my statue is not ideal at all. As you see, I got pretty lucky with some of the enchants, but I also got unlucky in terms of I couldn't finish my statue during prayer rush. Additionally, I got a global attack and it was a really high roll. I didn't have that many resources left, so I kept it. So now I have three boss damages that are SSS, one SSS global attack, and then a really shitty S tier boss damage. But that'll all get ironed out. Ideally, I would want one statue that's all global attack, one that's all boss damage, and I would use the boss damage one for the bosses and for, cross server showdown and the different dungeons. The attack one for PvP and for minion waves and the lamp thief. I'll explain that more in a bit, but the lamp thief, you want to use attack instead of boss damage. Um, because in the back accessory, we don't have that many things developed. I really just focus attack. I do a little bit into PAL damage and PAL attack speed. I was really just trying to get these to 40 or 50 or so in the cost, and then pushing the attack boost to around the same 40 or 50 or so in cost. Um, and then I'll probably move back and work for some of the base stats. But this is my attack preset. Again, just trying to be a generalized build because I'm lazy and want to have easy manipulability over my presets. So attack right side, get the PAL damage, a little PAL attack speed, attack here, and then, the rest of my materials go into HP and defense. And then in a couple of days, I'll click reset and get one attack boost and push it up like that. Um, so yeah, very similar across the board. Again, not that many materials to do that many things with this. And there were definitely some days I wasn't perfectly min-maxed. And early on, I couldn't push Dark Trials at all because I didn't have Blitz. So every single boss I fought would one-shot me. And even if I just full stacked defense and HP and used the damage res, potent spore, like the Bloom Spore, and I used Deer, and I used three Deers to try to have the extra damage res from the Necro ability. It didn't matter. Didn't matter. I was just getting blown up, especially by the mage. So I really had to wait till I got Blitz. And that was, of course, my last pink skill. My other ones were like level 2 and 3 by the time I got it. Um, I'm sure the skill difference is still somewhat apparent. Oh no, it's evened out a little bit, but clone's still 5. So, I was really late to getting Blitz, and because of that, I couldn't push it at all. I'm sure some other people that are similar aged, or if you're getting the Dark Trials privilege pass. So that's here, this thingy, this one. If you get this, this is definitely going to improve your ability to, you know, stack that resource and work into the tree a lot faster. I think you also get something for the lifetime pass. Yeah. So if you have those two, you're going to be min-maxing as well as possible. But as a free-to-play ad gremlin, I don't have those abilities or those luxuries, I guess is a way to put that. Um, Avian, I'll also show this quickly since it's the same across the board. It's the same trash one. Haven't gotten anything better. And yeah, I think it's going to be a long time. So I've just been pushing it. I'll probably use reset potion at one point to get it back to level one when I have something I actually like and I want to build into. But for right now, I've just been stacking this one, um, even though it's terrible. But again, all of mine are terrible. If you want for more reversal potions, more Yuki fruit, there might even be more Mimir springs, but I don't know. Let me see. No, there's no more Mimir springs. Maybe get some from here. Yeah, I lied. You do get them from here. But the achievements in the handbook are always great. You could complete a lot of these with your server mates. Getting the one with four gold affixes or four blues, you start sharing them around. People start sharing the ones they have three and three or four, and people start clearing those out. Um, Tan and Avian with like the high generation is really easy. You just breed with high generation. So you just someone puts out something that's like a generation 100, then you breed with it, you got a generation 101, ta-da. But yeah, the grow thing right here for the avian reversal potion, a great idea if you want to, when you eventually get a good avian or something that's better than right now what I'm using, which is actually abysmal. Um, And then Star Heroes, I guess, is also something that doesn't change across sets. So, I really just use the Spirit Harbinger with the active Star Hero skill, um, as well as the Stoneborn Warrior and the Chrono Sprite. If you wanted something better, I would say if I had more Star Heroes, I would get rid of this Chrono Sprite right here, and I would use I think it's the Holy Defender. Yeah, the Holy Defender is going to be reducing the target's damage res. You could also use the Barbarian Overlord to reduce the target's attack. Now, it would be a lovely world if you could use them both at the same time, but you can't due to the fact there's this cost limit. And if you're using this Spirit Harbinger up top, if you try to use both of them in the supports, so the left and the right side, the cost will be 11 out of 10, and you can't do it. So I would say replace the Chrono Sprite with either the Holy Defender or the Barbarian Overlord. You could also, if you weren't using active, you could have the Genie of Wishes for base stats and other things. But I think because of the fact most people don't have developed PAL combo, PAL crit, both like the rates for both of those, and then PAL crit damage, I think it's better to have the Spirit Harbinger, and that's still also what players use in the later game because of the fact that it is scaling your base crit of the pals. So even as you're pushing your crit bonus, this gets better and better and better. Um, Alternatively, if you had the Barbarian Overlord, you could also use that as an active in the first slot. But again, it's only hitting three pals, and it's getting you a final crit damage bonus, which is good, but because of the fact that it's only giving it to three pals instead of the Spirit Harbinger, which is going to give all pals, and it's not the base crit damage, a lot of people often opt for the Spirit Harbinger. Um, I guess the last thing is the artifact enchantment, and this is also a good place to bring something up. The hoarding of resources, like I was talking about earlier. this is one of the things that I'm hoarding a lot of. So, you hoard the rush resources for the rush events, and that's great. But you could also hoard some things in terms of trying to have the most optimized and quick experience in the later game. So what I'm hoarding is these green and red potions up here. Um, the green one is the Runestone Restore, and the red one, or I guess I think that kind of looks black, but the that one is the block potion. So, some people call these Gatorades. I have no clue. But they're very, very useful. The restore, basically, if I had something level 11 and I increased it one level, that would give me a new substat. So one of these four things would get upgraded. Let's say I wanted skill damage res, and instead it gave me, or let's say I want pow crit damage, and instead it gave me launch. I could use a green potion to take me back one level. I lose the amount of uh, runestone essence that I used in the top left over here, so that the top left material. But you go back the one level, or sorry, you go back the one level, and that's going to allow you to then try again to get the upgrade on Pal Crit. Ideally, you want every single upgrade. So at level 4, at level 8, 12, 16, and 20, all of those to be on PAL crit damage. So that's what I'm trying to push. If you're wondering about these red ones, if you were to click upgrade, it's a blocker. So you click here and you could click what you want to block. And what that's going to do is, let's say I really didn't want the launch, you know, the other three, so PAL damage res, global combo, I mean global counter damage and global basic attack damage, those now are the only three I could choose between, basically taking your chance at getting what you want from a 25% to a 33.3. Repeating. Um, but yeah, if you're wondering, I kind of just went for the four crit bonus or the four piece stat bonus of global PAL damage. I didn't really care much else what the game gave me. And I kind of just leveled them all to level 12, at least the ones that I thought were important. So, your PAL damage in the top right, your attack in the middle left, and then usually your HP in the top right or in the top left are somewhat important. Um, you could definitely have them all be level 10 to 12, but I'm kind of trying to save up some material and not just blow through my things. I think you could probably have them at level 10 or so, maybe level 8 and get away with that. But I could probably get this above level 1. Um, but due to the fact that show you what I do in PvP for archers, I don't really need as much combo damage res at this moment until they figure out some tricks. And defense really doesn't scale as fast, and I haven't really put that many upgrades into it because again, I'm just pushing attack for the early game, trying to push PvP and PvE. So again, I don't have this one as high of level. You just get a four-piece set, and that's going to get you the 5% and the 10% of the PAL damage in the global. And then I also not intentionally, but I have the 5% basic attack. You could really easily have 5% PAL or global um, crit res here. So you'd have, the iron wall piece set, like something like this, um, for the global crit res, or you could have, like I have the global basic attack. You could have anything realistically, but there's only PAL damage, which is directly going to affect you. So if you can have four of these slots, even putting something less good maybe in the defense one or the combo damage res slot here, especially before you build it up, isn't a terrible, terrible idea. No, I could really easily, because of what I'll show you later on, I could have this as counter damage or PAL damage, and it would definitely be more viable than as combo damage since attacking archers as a tamer is really easy. Unless they do certain things to defend, and then you usually die. But that's good. There should be a counter, in my opinion, to every strategy. Um, Last thing to note that I didn't down here is boss damage. If you wanted to run, an interesting build that uses the crit damage turned into POW crit damage from the Necro, class passive skill from the fifth class passive skill, then you could do that and have crit damage here. You could have crit res here. You could have uh, skill res here, skill damage res. But I find that for pushing PvE and because I'm lazy, I just leave boss damage here. I'm sure later on I'll have a skill damage res and a boss damage and a crit damage res and etc. etc. I usually like to have many, many options as I start to get things up and optimized. But yeah, hoarding a lot of my resources for when that point comes, getting good pinks I want to save, and starting to hard press the POW crit damage. Is there anything realistically that I didn't show? I think that, oh, okay. Last thing is the mount. So if you're lucky enough to get I guess not lucky enough, but you save up your resources and you're in a fortunate enough server circumstance where there aren't more people that have more resources than you at that exact moment for rush. Um, Best of luck to you. I ended up getting Hot Wheels. If you're wondering if I think this is the best option in terms of PvP, PvE, not necessarily. I think for PvP or, for PvP, especially for short fights, I think the Adapto Slime, so this rainbow dude, is probably your better option. And then for regens, which is later in the game, but then also for PvE, Boom to Bing might be exactly what you kind of want to think about because it basically gives you effect of Hot Wheels. It just takes longer to build up, but it is going to give you attack, regen, energy speed, and the PAL attack speed that you're already getting from the roller wheels like that I'm using. But this wouldn't be a terrible option for something like theater. And this is also something that you would want with the um, Nirvana Spore. So if you're going to use the Boom to Bing, usually people get Nirvana Spore to level 100. And what that does is if you click the eye right here on Nirvana, it'll show you what it affects. So it affects Boom to Bing. And if you had a level 100 Nirvana Spore, you would get the 10% damage res reduce onto your opponent at the start of battle instead of having to wait until all six triggers of the mount go off. And that takes about a minute. So that could be pretty long. But if you're using a level 100 Nirvana Spore, that activates instantly. And then every 10 seconds, you have the attack speed, energy speed, PAL speed increasing. And yeah, it doesn't double up. That's why it says or when, if you're wondering, if you try to do something cheeky and be like, I want 20% reduced PAL damage res, or I mean, reduced damage res. But this is still super, super useful. Um, and a lot of late game players use it when tanks start to rise their heads. Also with the Nirvana Spore is going to be impacting this Adapto Slime, but why this is a little better, in my opinion, for the earlier game is it's going to give you that attack boost right off the bat. And then if you have it, I think it might be level 1 or it's either level 10. It's going to give you this really small max HP shield, which isn't great, but it's more than nothing. Um, it then has the third effect where it reduces the damage taken, but you can't get Nirvana Spore that high, so that's more of something that you just have activate right before you die. And if you're fortunate enough, it lets you eat an extra couple of hits. And I think the adaptive slime, especially for free to play players, is a great option. Alternatively, you could also have gotten the Cloud Drifter. This is definitely a great one because if you include like the pink dragon, which is definitely not a bad pal because of the damage multiplier. But if you use this and let's say maybe the skill crit mask, or you use the what power is this thing called? It's like the moon sprite, the Sprite Fox. So if you use the Sprite Fox, there's a couple of ways to increase your skill crit rate without actually touching your gear. And then if you have any of your six skills go off, you're getting a 20% attack boost. More likely than not, that's going to go off, and that's going to allow you to have a nice little boost at the start of battle when you're fighting people. Again, great for PvP. Why I did get the rollerblades early is I wanted to be able to compete and keep up with the theater rewards. So I knew that, I was kind of on the edge in terms of getting the rush tokens for Pantheon and theater. So I wanted some way of keeping up a little better. And then um, also for the rush rewards. So if you go into remodel, you get all these rush rewards. And especially if you're a free to play player and you're saving up weeks or months between rushes to try to push for different resources. And your spenders are doing the same thing, but they have more, so you have to wait 2 months or so. It might be a while between you getting grades, especially that are going to directly impact you. But if you have, like me, for Hot Wheels, it's going to slightly improve my ability in PvP. It's going to help me definitely a nice little bit in PvE. But then it's also going to have these nice parking rewards. So every day I have a nice ability to get some extra dungeon keys, get some awakening scrolls, etc. Um, and yeah, I think this is pretty much my store, like what I use for the boss story. Again, if you wanted to, if you were stuck on the minions or you just wanted to push through a daily task quickly, you could really easily have, this should all be global attack. But again, I didn't finish my statues in time for prayer rush. So you could have all global attack here for the minions. And then I guess because I just said that, I'll go into Lamp Thief. So for Lamp Thief, this is, a very similar one, but it's slightly different. If you notice, my pals are exactly the same. My skills basically just remove any bits of sustain and um, the brambles or the vine skill, because that's going to, you don't have to worry about them moving, the Lamp Thief. But you are going to want to pay attention to your relic changes. So in the relics, first off, let me go here, even though I'm probably going to die in the story mode, but you're going to have the chrono spore here to give you some extra time. This is just going to let you have, either an additional skills trigger or allow your pals to get a couple hits out extra. And this is usually very useful. Additionally, you're going to want the flame book because boss damage does not impact the um, lamp thief. So don't use this one, use this one. And again, you're going to want to do the same thing for your prayers using a global attack statue instead of boss damage. This isn't ideal. I'm aware. I apologize. My lack of min max utterly upsets me, but there's not much I could do with my lack of resources. Um, for the talents, it uses the same one I showed before. Attack. For awakening, it uses the same thing I showed before. It's called damage. My avian is exactly the same. My star heroes are exactly the same. And yeah, so there's that slight change with the relics and your prayer statue usually, and your skills. Um, for PvE family, this is what I use against the family dungeon. So this is the Blazing Cave. I definitely don't have the best score, but I don't have the worst score. So I feel like I'm not in the terrible, terrible spot. Like this, he's also a tamer. So, we're not in a terrible spot. There's some archers that I see, but it definitely. is something that you need to play around with, and it's going to be based off of how much sustain versus damage you have. For me personally, I use the disarm skill and the healing skill, or the disarm skill and the clone skill. Um, you might be able to use disarm and the dazzled skill. So basically, it's trying to get the disarmed and the full stun skill to hit them. But personally, I find that using disarmed and using healing, I could live to two disarm triggers. Now, this isn't always true, because if you're doing more damage and you get it to a higher level, like every time you quote unquote kill this guy, you get him to a higher level. And as he's higher levels, he does more damage. So let's say you get your attack up, you start doing more damage, and now you're noticing you're not getting to the second disarm. What I really easily do is I change this Beast Hide book out for the immunity book, just to give me the extra couple seconds to hit that second level of disarm. Usually the 20% change from the boss damage won't reduce my total if, again, I wasn't going to hit the disarm, because the 3 extra seconds, then the disarm, when you're already using the time statue, and if you're using the potent spore, all these things are basically just going to allow you to have all these extra seconds to have some uh, free damage where you could just hit him while he's not hitting you. Um, and yeah, that's usually how I attack that boss. If you're wondering, the healing is a delay. It's usually on 10 seconds. Sometimes I click it slightly before then. It's usually when my disarm goes off that I have a shield, because of the Star Hero, which a rock guy gives you a shield, the Stormborn Warrior. When his shield goes down, that's when I click it, my healing. Um, but that's just what I do. I'm sure there's a more optimized strategy. I'm not the best PvE guy. I'm just show you what I've been using to push. Um, this should be all standard. Oops. But yeah, everything else is pretty much exactly the same, if I'm not mistaken. Damage here is this damage. Yeah, this is also damage. Um, the enchantments never change, because I don't have more enchantments than Star Hero, and they're exactly the same. Okay. Uh, Dragon, this is what I usually use against the Molten Ruins. So with the Molten Ruins, what I noticed is you either want to have a lot of free hit triggers, so where you're not being hit and you can deal damage, or you want to have really quick skills. So either use which is disarm and dazzle, both set on different cues, but I constantly change. So I want to give values, because they're honestly going to be wrong. But usually there's no delay, dazzle. I wait till the dragons hit me, and then again, I have the disarm go off about a half second or second before it hits me, so that I have the 4 seconds or so because you're using just dazzle and slow time statue. Very great here. So we can all that thorn thicket is just to basically after the time for dazzle to go, it's going to show how long it takes the dragon to get to you. So as you change any of these pieces, the delay on this arm is going to change. Exact same tiles. Towns are exactly the same. This is a slightly different awakening, so I have a couple of slides. I'll show that one, like set two, set three. As you notice, they're pretty similar. They just vary in how I distribute my base stats. So, damage obviously is on. But then we move into one, which was one of my original ones when I first had less awakening scrolls, so I went more for something more. And if I'm running into something that they need more HP for place, this wasn't a bad option. But now I think I'd rather go for control play for the invincibility and the time triggers. This is again very similar, just slightly more reduced. Again, the same thing. It's pretty much trend less attacks and more attacks as we move down. Um, the fast skills that has a little bit of disarm time. Maybe the boss won't super slowly, or the alternative thing is going full damage, quick damage build. So you go, you use dust, you use when you drink this relic right here, you have this necklace register, and you're basically just trying to pump as possible. And you get one wave of skills or so every, if not one every other. So the last dragon, which is the strongest, you're really protected. I'm sure there's also some wonky things to do with the entanglement buttons and everything else. After when I dropped it, I didn't have enough damage. So yeah, later away with panda thing, but at one point you're gonna get a watch to the fact that you're not boosting any damage, you just basically stun locking them and preventing them from getting you or reaching you slow down with literally zero speed. Uh, but I think that's pretty much everything. I mean, look here again to change out the these type of really cool things you're going to use the healing book more during build. Most of the ones that you're making once or twice, um, once the severity of my trigger. So you really want to play the build. Again, Necro is not the best team. It's really, but I have a lot of fun playing that, trying to push things that no, no place to put things what they're tired. You know, I should push. I've got what or PvE, what you know, this combination I can use to eat that whole just put city. What I do is I go see the balls, see what that means, sure what is it, and I pick an archer, and go put this on, I'm going to put shield warrior, I'm busy, easy, what what for it's definitely a thing of restarting and restart that's the fun thing. So, that's the purpose of it, really, definitely maybe not sure as